everyone, welcome to a new video. Today I am so excited to be sharing with you all my Victober pile of possibilities. I can't believe how fast this year has flown. I feel like Victober just happened, but that was already a year ago, which is absolutely insane. So time flies. And I could not be more excited for yet again another Victober. This will be my second time participating and I am just so excited. I do have to say September has been a very slow reading month for me. I've been extremely busy training for my new job, and although my job will be part-time, which I'm thankful for, the training has been full-time, so I haven't been able to read as much and I've just been in a huge slump, and I think that has to do with some books I was reading towards the end of August, but I'm hopeful that in October things will pick back up again. I'll have more time to read, and that my desire to read Victorian literature will just be ignited again, and I'm very hopeful. So here's to hoping that my reading slump will be completely over by the time October starts. If you don't know what Victober is, it is a month-long readathon throughout the month of October in which we celebrate Victorian literature. We read Victorian literature and just have a great time reading Victorian classics, and it is becoming one of my absolute favorite readathons out of all of them done throughout the year, and I just cannot wait. Before I go over the books that I'm hoping to read, I also want to mention another readathon that is happening in October. I won't be filming a dedicated TBR or Pile of Possibilities video just because I don't know yet what I want to read for it. I haven't had the time to sit down and just figure out what I want to read. So that readathon is ANNE-TOBER, and it is being hosted by a lovely friend, Shatona Havig, and I'll leave her channel linked below as well as her announcement video. And this readathon is all about celebrating Ella Montgomery, Anne of Green Gables, all of that. The prompts are amazing, and I also have the bingo board that I will put on the screen here. And it is just, it sounds so fun. I really want to try to fulfill some of the prompts. I don't think I'll get to everything, but I did want to mention this readathon as well if it sounds like something you would be interested in. Maybe some of the Victorian literature I read will fulfill some of the prompts for this one. I'm not quite sure yet, but I just wanted to mention that as well. And moving on to Victober, need a coffee break. Also, best fall coffee mug ever. I love fall most of all, 100%. But moving on to Victober, there are 5 hosts as there are every year, and we have Kate Howe, Katie from Books and Things, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, Petra from Petra U, and Roz from Scallydandling About the Books. And they each have their own prompt. And what I tried to do was find just a few books that can cover all 5 prompts. And each of the hosts, I will have all their channels linked down below. They each have recommendations for their specific prompt. And the recommendations were super helpful. I definitely went with a lot of their recommendations for picking what I wanted to read, and I really needed that help because I definitely don't know a lot about classics before I go into them. I usually know a little bit that kind of tells me if it's a classic I'd be interested in reading, then I put it on my TBR, but then I usually forget what it's about. So I go into classics fairly blind, and so their videos were just helpful in knowing what classic fits what prompt. I'll just mention the 5 prompts and then I will go over the books that I plan on reading. So Kate's challenge is to read a Victorian work featuring a stranger/outsider. Katie's challenge is to read a piece of Victorian new woman fiction. Marissa's is to read a Victorian work by an author who is new to you. Petra's is to read a Victorian first-person narrative, and then Roz is to read a Victorian work in which class features strongly. I feel like I definitely could have just read one book and it could have fit all the prompts, but I went with 3, and I'm really going to prioritize these 3. If I end up not liking one of them and I DNF it, that's fine. That's a whole other scenario, but these are my priorities. So for the first challenge, which is Kate's challenge to read a work of Victorian literature which features a stranger or an outsider, I've decided to read The Law and the Lady by Wilkie Collins. I honestly have no idea how this book fits that prompt. I just know that Kate Howe recommended it and that it does fit the prompt in some way. So I guess part of the reading experience is figuring out how. But from what I know about this book, it is one of the earliest books to feature a female detective, if not the first one. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we have a female detective in the Victorian era. I'm just very excited about this, and I really, really like Wilkie Collins' writing style, so fingers crossed that this is a good one. Also, jumping down the list to Petra's challenge, which is to read a book in first person. This is in first person, so I am using this book for both of those prompts. And then Katie's challenge is to read a work of new women fiction, and Marissa's challenge is to read a book by a Victorian author new to you, and so I'm using one book to fulfill both of those prompts, and that is The Odd Women by George Gissing. I've never read anything by George Gissing, so he is a new author to me, and I don't know how this is a new woman fiction. I have no idea, but this was in Katie's recommendations video, so that's why I decided to pick this one up. This is a shorter one, and my goal with this readathon is to pick shorter books for my pile of possibilities. I read Dombey and Son back in August. It was a really, really long Victorian classic, and for Victober, I don't want to just be overwhelmed by long Victorian classics, so I'm going with slightly shorter ones, and that is why I chose this one. But this is a late Victorian era story, and I believe this is like a proto-feminist story about how women were, you know, suffering in the 19th century, at the turn of the century, it looks like, and just like social inequalities and things like that. So we shall see. And then for Roz's challenge, to read a work in which class features strongly. I feel like the majority of Victorian literature features class in some way, shape, or form, and you can read basically anything. And so I chose this book not because I know class features strongly, I actually don't. I'm just assuming it does. So if I'm completely wrong, oh well. The whole point of this readathon is to celebrate Victorian literature, but I just went with this book anyway because I really, really, really want to read it. And that is Framley Parsonage by Anthony Trollope. I read Dr. Thorne earlier this year, and oh my goodness, did I adore it. And I was just so excited to continue the Barsetshire series. So this is the next one. This is book 4, and I don't know anything about it. That's how I'm going to leave it. But I love Anthony Trollope's writing style. I love his character work, and I'm really, really excited. It's not too long. And yeah, I can't wait to get back into this world with these characters. So those were the 3 books that I'm prioritizing 100% throughout the month. But I am a huge mood reader, so it could happen that I just don't want to read one of them. And if that happens, I have quite the large pile of possibilities here, which I will go over in a second. But I also wanted to mention a couple other books. The first one is Victoria and Albert, A Family Life at Osborne House. And this one I just hauled in my recent book haul. It's not like super short, but a shorter biography in a way about Queen Victoria and Prince Albert and their early family life, their roles as a father and mother, and just their time at Osborne House, which is where they spent a lot of their time with their family. I'm probably going to start this last week of September and just dip my toes into it here and there throughout the month of October. And even if I don't finish it in October, that's totally fine, but it has a lot of paintings, a lot of illustrations, a lot of pictures, and I'm very intrigued. So that's another one that I wanted to read. And I would also love to reread a couple Oscar Wilde plays. I absolutely loved this collection, The Importance of Being Earnest, and other plays. And there are a few in here that I would love to reread. I probably won't reread them all, but I loved Lady Windermere's Fan, A Woman of No Importance, and The Importance of Being Earnest. There are a couple in here that I wasn't as big of a fan of, but I love Oscar Wilde's writing. I love his plays, and I also found some great versions to watch on YouTube. So I'm really hopeful that I will be able to reread a couple of these plays. And now on to my pile of possibilities. So this is where I am going to probably pay more attention to your recommendations and what you all think I would enjoy and what you all think I should read. So I have quite a few books here, but again, I'm not going to get to all of them 100%. Not going to happen. So I do need your help in, I guess, figuring out what I should read and what I should prioritize. The first one here is Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. And this, I believe, is a novella, but it's like interconnected short stories from what I've heard. So I don't really know what it's about. It does say, in the small town of Cranford, changes in the air. The Industrial Revolution is just around the corner, and with it will come the railroad. Life will never be the same again. And yeah, I don't really know much else about it. I have heard there are very endearing characters in this story, this collection of stories. So I guess we shall see. Let me know if you've read this and what you thought. Another Elizabeth Gaskell I may read is Ruth, and I didn't put Wives and Daughters, which I just purchased. I didn't put it on this list just because of how huge it is, and I want to save that one for last. So out of the novels by Elizabeth Gaskell, I still have to read Cranford, which I know it's not really a novel, but I'm just counting it. Cranford, Ruth, and I don't think there's another one, but once I've read these two, then I will read Wives and Daughters. But this one, I believe, is a very tragic story about Ruth, who is left pregnant and has an illegitimate child, and she just has a lot of trauma that she goes through, and I've heard it's quite sad, but very, very good. So we shall see. Also, if any of the books that I mention are books that you are planning on reading, let me know, because I would be down to buddy read any of these. So I feel like I have to mention a Bronte novel, and I may just reread either Wuthering Heights or Agnes Grey, or just one of the shorter ones. Or depending on if I'm in the mood, I may try Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I still haven't read this one, and I have absolutely no idea what it's about, but I'm willing to give it a go. I also forgot to mention another Elizabeth Gaskell, only this is a nonfiction, and that is The Life of Charlotte Bronte. So speaking of both Elizabeth Gaskell and the Brontes, I thought this would be a very interesting one to try out. It is nonfiction, and nonfiction isn't generally something I'm very interested in, but I'm really curious to see how Elizabeth Gaskell portrays Charlotte Bronte. Very, very curious. So if any of you have read this, let me know what your thoughts were and if you think I would enjoy it. Depending on if I read and enjoy The Law and the Lady by Wilkie Collins, I may try another Wilkie Collins, and I have a shorter one here. That is Jezebel's Daughter, and again, I don't know what it's about really. I am so bad with synopses when it comes to classics. I just don't want to know too much when I pick them up. I feel like I try one by an author, and if I like that one book by the author, then I want to read everything by them, and I don't need to know what all the books are about. But I have heard that this one is more on the suspenseful gothic side, so I'm very, very intrigued. I also have a few books by Thomas Hardy, and I'm just not quite sure which one I want to go with. We first have the Selected Stories of Thomas Hardy, and this is just a collection of short stories, so maybe this would be a good option just so I can have, you know, a short story here and there to dip into and just to not feel too bogged down. We also have The Tess of the D'Urbervilles, but still kind of scared to read this one. And then we have The Return of the Native. So I'm just not sure which one I will be in the mood for, if I'm even in the mood for Thomas Hardy. Maybe I won't read any of these, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? And then the final book on this pile of possibilities is a children's classic, and that is The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. He was a Scottish writer from the Victorian era, and this, I believe, was published in the 1870s, so it counts for me. And yeah, it's a children's story about a princess and a goblin, and I'm very, very curious. It's got some illustrations, and yeah, we shall see. All right, everyone, so that is it for my Victober pile of possibilities. I feel like, I don't know, like kind of sad that I'm not including Charles Dickens. Like it doesn't feel really like a Victorian readathon without Dickens, but because I read Dombey and Son in August, I need a break. I definitely need a break. So won't be reading any more Dickens this year, but I'm very happy with my pile of possibilities, and fingers crossed that I find some new favorite Victorian classics. I'm very, very hopeful. And if any of you are participating in Victober, I would love to know what you plan on reading. If any of you are reading any of the books I mentioned, I would also love to know. And like I said, that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!